chat, and it's a link to a post-event survey, just 3 questions, not take you under 3 minutes to do. But we really would like to have your feedback and hear your thoughts on this presentation and future ones we might hold as well. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the webinar over to Dean Miller, LACF's Executive Director, and he will take it from here.
Sounds great. Thank you, Laurel. Much appreciated. Thank you, everybody, for being here for your lunch hour. I like to pretend that this is a brown bag luncheon, except I didn't bring a brown bag lunch for myself. That would have been a little hard to eat and talk at the same time. But I hope you get to enjoy your lunch and listen to us talk. Okay, so let's see if that works. Sometimes you just have to have your thing go right at the beginning. So, I don't actually see my video screen, so I will assume that it's there. Hank, can you give me a yes that you can see me?
Yes, I can see you, and I can hear you.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much. I will continue with the screen and see how this goes. Where was I? Oh, so I was going to start, and then obviously everything sort of glitched on our end, which was interesting. So bear with me. Thank you so much. I'm really excited again to start this conversation. Let me start off actually by sort of framing the subject, and then I'll introduce our panelist, and we'll go from there. We started off by sort of exploring the pandemic and how it would affect our community and organizations and nonprofits. Really a year ago in March, when we started sort of assessing how the community is going to respond. And as we moved forward, we started looking at how the community was going to recover. And we started hearing about different kinds of recovery curves, whether there were going to be a V-shaped recovery curve where you had some optimism and downturn and bounce back and so on, or U-shape, which is actually kind of easy to imagine, where you start off really top and then you go bottom out and you come back out. Or W, like literally start off on top, hit bottom, go back up, hit bottom again, go back up. Or an L shape where you never really recovered. It was an extended downturn. What became really more present to us and what became more apparent that we would actually experience is something known as a K-shaped recovery. And this is what we actually started focusing on, because in a K-shaped recovery, what you're seeing is a divergence. The economy overall improves, but the parts of the economy that are improving are not necessarily uniform for everybody. You actually end up seeing inequity accelerating due to the pandemic, and then you see the recovery affecting 2 different ways. You see an uptick in one arm, and then you see a downtick in the other arm. So for instance, Hank, if you wouldn't mind populating, we will see an uptick in stakeholders, homeowners who see home values skyrocketing, frankly, men, college grads, prime borrowers, and so on. And you would see a different segment not recovering as well: the renter community, hospitality, retail, women, non-college graduates, service sectors, and subprime borrowers. And this kind of recovery, where you see a schism in the community, is one that we started to become concerned about. Now, interesting enough, we saw this also shared in a commentary that Catherine posted through her blog. And so we felt that this should be an important conversation for us to cover and dive deeper into. Why should we care about a K-shaped recovery? And what does it really mean? I think fundamentally what we're talking about here is that members of our communities that faced really hard and difficult circumstances before the pandemic, that those situations haven't disappeared for them. Many of them are still on a knife's edge where one slip, whether it's a missed payment or a temporary loss of employment, could really rip away what is a balanced life or their situation. And the stress and the anxiety that comes with living in the Bay Area hasn't diminished. It's still fairly strong. We still have issues around affordable housing stock. We still have issues around whether people can afford to own or to rent. There is still obviously housing that's in short supply. And then as the economy rebounds and the commute times start to increase again, we still have the same issues that we had before the pandemic, with people sort of being forced further and further out in order to be employed in this area. So we thought that this conversation would be important to dive into, because the situations that our community members are facing in some sense is even worse than prior to the pandemic. And I'm just delighted that we have such a fantastic panel to dive into this subject with us. Hank, next slide, if you don't mind. I sent them an email to begin with, and I said, "You're my dream team. I hope you can all say yes." And I was just delighted that they all could actually say yes. Let me briefly sort of give their introductions. Catherine Crystal Foster is the CEO and co-founder of Magnify Community, which focuses on empowering local philanthropy to make Silicon Valley a better place for all of us. She's been an entrepreneur in the social sector leader who's been focused on driving social change for more than 20 years. Prior to Magnify, she led the Wesley Foundation and also the Peninsula College Fund, and founded her own consulting practice. Ellen Kamai serves as the mayor of the city of Mountain View. I've read her bio, and I was delighted to know that she's actually a third generation resident of Mountain View, which is astonishing. It's fabulous to see people stay here and have that longevity. She's the daughter of a Chinese and Puerto Rican American mother and a Japanese American father, born at Harp Mountain Internment Camp. And she currently chairs the City of Mountain View Ad Hoc Committee on Race, Diversity, and Inclusion, as well as the city's Youth Services Subcommittee. And then lastly, Maria Maricoin serves as the executive director of the Day Worker Center of Mountain View. She's been in that role for nearly 2 decades. She joined the center having emigrated from Mexico with her son as a house cleaner in 1999, and then began organizing the workers on the street from its original location in Los Altos, when its original location in Los Altos closed in 2001. She became the executive director in 2005 and helped build it into a strong nonprofit with its own building, staff, and community-wide support. Please help me welcome the panel, and we will jump into the conversation. I wanted to start off actually by, I sent the panelists the questions in advance, but I'm going to tee up Catherine first. But this question is relevant to all three of you, which is, given your perspective, how are we as a community experiencing the recovery differently? What challenges are you seeing? What are the opportunities that we should be focusing on? Catherine first, please.
Great, thanks, Adine. Thanks for that introduction, that warm introduction, and really putting an incredibly important issue right on the table in front of all of us. I'm really glad to be here with all of you today. And thanks to all of you who decided to take your lunch hour to spend time with us having this conversation. You know, when you were talking about how is it particular here, this conversation, this topic was very much on my mind yesterday when I had the opportunity to witness a really striking display of images and be part of a very provocative conversation about the real faces of Silicon Valley. And it's possible maybe even that some of you listened in on that too. It's about a project of a Stanford professor and a renowned photographer who captured the whole spirit of people working toward the California dream here in Silicon Valley. And they recorded them in a book called Seeing Silicon Valley. And what this book did was, and these photographs did exactly what we're talking about here. It's underscoring the worlds within worlds that we experience here in Silicon Valley, underscoring this notion of Silicon Valley as an idea, somewhat disconnected from an actual place where people are living and working. And it elevated the invisibility in many ways of so many people who live here, and the invisibility of this K-shaped recovery that Adine was speaking about. And one of the problems of this K-shape is that folks, maybe at that top branch, don't necessarily even know that they're at a top branch and that there is this other lower downward trending one. So as Adine said, we at Magnify Community are all about catalyzing and activating more local philanthropy. And we do that by testing and learning and inspiring high capacity donors to give more to the community nonprofits that serve the people who live and who work here to make Silicon Valley a better place for all of us. And this work has really been, driving me for day and night for 3 years. But this past year has just been, utterly, utterly different. And I don't want to, steal any thunder from Maria, who I know is going to be giving us much more of an on the ground view and perspective on what's happening in the lives of the working people who are really being challenged in order to hold on to their lives and their livelihoods here. But a couple of things that I'd like to underscore now to kind of ground us in where we are, give us a couple of reference points are in Santa Clara County right now, there's 28,000 renter households who are behind on their rent. And the low income ones of those folks who are behind on their rent, they owe $58 million in back rent right now. And there's an eviction moratorium that ends next month. And the implications for those folks could be devastating. Our local nonprofits are going to play, I hope and I expect, a very key role in offering a safety net for those folks, advocating for policy change, providing legal assistance, some cash relief, helping folks take advantage of what's already in place. And I also want to underscore a thing that I know is present for many people, which is hunger in our midst. So Second Harvest of Silicon Valley, our large food bank, provides food to many of the organizations that operate in Mountain View and Los Altos. They are now serving still 500,000 people every month, which is double what it was before the start of the pandemic. The overwhelming majority of those people are essential workers, and more than 70% of them have said that someone in their household has lost a job or has had their hours reduced. So as we're seeing this recovery, as we're seeing people returning to work, let's remember that recovery is right now just not affecting everyone. We have an incredible situation of vaccine inequity, COVID disparities. Latinos are 25% of our population in Santa Clara County, but 50% of the COVID cases. Again, nonprofits funded significantly by philanthropy are playing a really outsized role in ameliorating some of that inequity. But let's look at that other leg, that other arm of the K, that one that's going up, because in many respects, the folks who we are looking at working with most closely are the people who have been benefiting in other ways as this recovery is moving forward. So when Magnify Community started 3 years ago, there were 76,000 millionaires and billionaires in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. And that's not including the value of their home. That's about their investable assets. So 76,000 in 2018. How many today? 148,000. So, let that sink in for a second. There is a huge opportunity there, which is the way I'd like to think about it, a huge opportunity for philanthropy. And a key point also to underscore is that the wealth is growing, and that the wealth it's being replaced, and being replaced faster than it could even be given away. Right now, according to Forbes, who counts all of our billionaires, American billionaire wealth is $4.6 trillion. That's up 35% since January of 2020, right before COVID hit. So in other words, US billionaires have gotten $1.2 trillion richer during the pandemic. Now in Silicon Valley, we've got our share of billionaires. I believe the count is about 70. And right here very locally, including some whose names I know here in Mountain View, Los Altos, many of those folks who have been making money in crypto, in SPACs, in LiDAR, they are all rising into that billionaire rank. And for the most part, what we've seen in Magnify is folks are not rushing to give it all away. They're not even rushing to give a big chunk of it away. Many are giving something. And so there's some generosity, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But what we've observed is that folks are not giving, the increase in the way that people are giving is not rising proportionally to the increase in their wealth. And similarly, people's sense of how rich they are and how much they can afford to give away is very much based on looking at their peers. And when people look at their peers with respect to giving, they tend to look up, they don't look down. They look at people who have more than they do, not to say, oh my goodness, with all that I have as compared to other folks, who may have less, I actually can and should give away more. We've also observed in our work that the donor, even during the pandemic, the donor check sizes are a bit smaller and more arbitrary than the needs in the community and the capacity of the donors might warrant. And that doesn't really change much. I mean, in part, it's because there aren't a lot of really good and well understood anchors and benchmarks for donors. But I don't want to suggest that the story is all negative here. We're seeing a couple of other trends over the past year. And I would kind of lump them into two different categories. One is about disconnection, and the other one is about a much more positive desire to do something. So in terms of the disconnection, what we've observed, and I'm sure this jives with many of your experiences, donors quite literally went elsewhere, and they went to a certain extent into hibernation. So maybe they were in Martis Camp, up in Tahoe, maybe they were in Aspen, maybe they were in Hawaii. Donors went other places. And there's no judgment implied in that. Many people packed up and went. I know my family, we loaded up into a car and we spent some time working from home in, Airbnbs in Colorado. So it's not so much that it's about judgment, but what it does mean is that you don't have the proximity to the need. So what we at Magnify did was we ended up bringing some of that need to folks, which will, again, I'll speak about in a sec, about that did activate people to give. We also noted that many donors in our midst got their vaccinations early, and as a consequence, stayed in bubbles that were very homogenous and that were very isolated, once again, from other people in community. I was noting that by the end of March, 3 in 4 residents of Atherton had at least one dose of the vaccine, even before many of them were theoretically even eligible to be vaccinated.
Hey, Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can bring in the other panelists, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
All right, and then we'll keep the conversation going. Mayor, I'd like to ask you for your perspective from the Civic Center, center of Mountain View in this area. How is this recovery affecting Mountain View differently for different segments of the population?
Great, thanks so much, Adine. Big shout out and thank you to the Los Altos Community Foundation, who's been such an essential partner during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we're starting to talk about, I think, recovery. Also, I know that there are many nonprofit partners on the call and different organizations that have been helping the city of Mountain View. And I just want to say thank you. We don't have an opportunity to see each other in person, so this is my one and only opportunity to do so. So I just wanted to make sure that I did that. I think one of the things that you mentioned in your question, Adine, is it's been a process, right? The COVID-19 pandemic has been a process. And I think what I've observed serving as vice mayor last year and then this year as mayor is the reliance on local government. When the pandemic first struck, I think there was a lot of confusion, not a lot of clarity coming from the federal government, coming from Washington, D.C. There was a lot of questions about our health and safety. And I think something that we thought was only going to be a few weeks turned into months, has turned into a year plus. And so government has really had to step up and take a role, not only in the communication about our safety and health guidelines, but also how we can support our community. And when we're talking about supporting our community, it's our nonprofits, it's our small businesses, it's our residents. One of the things I think Catherine mentioned in her comments is how the pandemic has, I would say, exacerbated the inequities that were already existing within Silicon Valley. And so that's one of the things I've noticed in the pandemic, the communities of color, which are being affected by the most pressing kind of public policy issues, continue to feel the effects. But what I will say is the collaboration that I've seen with Santa Clara County and the state of California has been unlike anything I've ever seen. The 15 cities within Santa Clara County realized that they needed to kind of band together and tackle the issues as they were coming forward. So the first thing that we tried to do was talk about testing. Right? Having access to COVID-19 tests was really essential, and having community partners like Maria at the Day Worker Center saying, we need flexibility, right? So that was the other thing. in the recovery process is making sure that government is flexible to the needs of those that they're trying to serve, particularly those on the front lines, right? And those are mean drop-in COVID-19 tests. And now we're doing drop-in COVID-19 vaccines. So government has had to zigzag, pivot, and I've seen us be more proactive. So the city of Mountain View, we have hired a communications team of 3 individuals, and we work closely with our Office of Multilingual Outreach, where we are working on translating in Spanish, Mandarin, Russian, and German to meet people where they are. I think government has had to, move to online meetings, move to webinars like we are on right now, and I've seen that all as part of the recovery process. We worked with the Community Foundation to put together a fund, right? Together Mountain View, to fund a fund for our small business community and a fund for those who need help with rent relief, which I know was mentioned. So I've really seen our community band together and find out how we can all kind of coordinate, provide the information back into the community, as well as provide those relief funds. So for example, one of the things that the city of Mountain View did was put together a small business loan program. Well, as soon as we did that, we heard it should be a grant program because no one's looking for another loan. People are looking for actual relief. So we've been able to pivot and do that. So we've seen 2 rounds of PPE funding, and now we've had 2 rounds of small business grants. So that's just some of the things we've been working on. But I think it has been and continues to be an evolution. However, with the vaccines and vaccinations going to those 12 years and older, I think it's just about continuing to have access so that when we have our June 15th reopening date, which is coming up very soon, we are all prepared and ready, right? I think that's going to be part of our conversation this afternoon too. So.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Mayor. Let me turn to Maria, who we've gotten to know each other, honestly, through a pandemic. And it's been wonderful to support the organization during this time. I would love to hear actually what you're seeing on the ground. How are the communities that you support seeing this recovery in different ways than perhaps people that would be normally celebrating the reopening of our restaurants and so on? We'll get you unmuted if you don't want.
It's better if I want to be here, right? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. I echo the mayor and Catherine about thank you, the Los Altos Community Foundation, just for organize and just be the leader that we need in philanthropy and community indeed. So, and yeah, so our relationship has been getting closer through COVID. That maybe I can name one of the good things from COVID. Just to have this connection, personal connection with many people around us. And definitely, as you mentioned it, the impact in the community that I serve has been totally unspeakable. I really cannot explain words. So for people that we serve, the center is their home when they come and spend more hours during the day awake than in other places. And just suddenly, just to need to close has been really impactful in many, many ways beyond just find out work. So for them, they lose their refugee. They lost the place when they come and feel comfortable and welcome. And the recovery is not looking so close and so soon. So we have been able to handle this separation just through communication, through technology. That, by the way, maybe you didn't know, but my community is not really versed in technology. So we really struggle just to send text messages to them. The kids of the day workers was really unable to continue doing school in their homes or in their cars because lack of connectivity. So the future of the close overcome to this challenge we can see it far away. So in the positive way, so we have been experiencing a lot of support from the community. Of course, Los Altos Community Foundation was really instrumental on this, but unbelievably, just making some notes for this presentation. So we were able to distribute more than almost $300,000 to the workers. And that is remarkably impactful, and it's like a miracle because how it happens, well, community at the best. And I have stories to share with you, and one who comes to my mind, and now, and many of the viewers that are participating in this webinar knows this person. So his name is Justo. So he came to this country many, many years ago. I met him like 20 years ago. And through his hard work, so was able to send money to their country and educate 5 of his kids. So they are professionals at this moment, but unfortunately, with COVID here, so his health was really, really in bad shape. And he went to Mexico just last month, if I recall correctly. He was amputating. So one leg was amputating besides all the consequences for COVID. So this is one sad story, but I just want to bring to conversation because maybe as Catherine said, the people who is in the app and the phone, the key shape maybe don't know that these are a reality, that these people exist, and that now we have opportunity that when you know how to come together and make this world and this opportunity really a great possibility for improve our communities.
Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate your comments and reflection. I want to tee something up for all 3 of you. And Catherine mentioned it, but it's one of those things that I've been wondering as well. She mentioned 28,000 people, if I got the number right, that in some sense would be at housing risk. If you can let me know if I got that wrong or not. But we got a moratorium, if I recall, that's being lifted next month. What should we expect? I mean, are we expecting a ticking time bomb that's actually going to go off where we will have just this influx of people that are no longer able to meet rent demands and will find themselves without housing? Or are we going to just be able to navigate this very elegantly? I mean, I know there's resources coming to people, financial resources, but is it enough? And I'd love whoever wants to jump in, just please.
I can take it because I don't think it's going to be enough. Definitely. So I want to thank again the support from the community. But yeah, this is going to be very dramatic results. And I really want to get the optimism from our mayor just to say we are ready. But that is going to be very difficult to handle, displacement and just people without housing. So here, close to the Day Worker Center, for maybe some of you that doesn't know where it's located, and we are in the back of the Rengstor Park. Crisanto is one of the streets that takes you to Rengstor, and it's plenty, both sides of people living in their cars. So because they have no other opportunity. So maybe, and honestly, believe me, people is considering just to live on the street and just get some vehicles in order to live there because they need to be here because many other reasons. So jobs are here, but yeah, definitely, we need to really think and get ready for legal support from people. So it needs to be challenged, all this eviction in case that happens sooner than later.
You know, and I'll jump in with a couple of other points too, Maria. I mean, I think that this is going to be tough. There's a new plan kind of announced this morning. I was seeing in the paper that there's going to be some ways for, you know, some additional distribution of funds locally. But I think that what we are going to see is what we have been seeing, which is that there are going to be, number one, a number of people slipping through the cracks. Number two, we are going to be intensely reliant on our nonprofit sector to fill in the gaps that markets and governments are not filling. That is what nonprofits and philanthropy do. And so, you know, Destination Home, which I know is probably familiar to a number of you, a big collective impact effort in Santa Clara County that's all about preventing homelessness. They distributed, I believe it's $35 million in cash assistance. A lot of it is going toward rent relief. But what is also incredibly important is the advocacy around, you know, ongoing protections, making sure that there are legal organizations that are in place to represent tenants and to let tenants know what their rights are. Because the one thing is people, despite an eviction moratorium, there are still people being evicted. And there's folks who, you know, in particular, people who are undocumented very frequently are taken advantage of in this, you know, in this whole system with, you know, various threats. But to you know, just the short answer is yes, there is going to be a problem. Yes, there are things that we can do about it.
Mayor?
So, you know, I guess I'll try to answer it in a few different ways, which is one, the city of Mountain View has been working on this issue since before the COVID-19 pandemic. So these are conversations that Maria and I have been having all 3 years that I've been on council and the 7 years I served on the planning commission. So these conversations, so I would say that's maybe the silver lining is the city has been in these discussions with our nonprofit partners from, you know, with Destination Home since before the pandemic. So the city, we have strategic goals, and one of them is being a community for all, and we've prioritized displacement policy for our unstably housed individuals that we've been working on, and continue to. So I would say that's the first thing. The second is during the pandemic, the city and through the help of Los Altos Community Foundation has been able to redistribute over $5 million into our most vulnerable community members. And so that not only is in rental relief, but it's also been in food assistance. It has been in providing wireless connection. So we have about 8 safe parking lots within the city of Mountain View, where we have over 120 residents living in their vehicles or recreational vehicles or something of the sort. I have been working during the pandemic to make sure that they have access to internet and connectivity. We have the largest safe parking program in all of Santa Clara County, even eclipsing Santa Clara County. And we are continuing to work on, you know, lease agreements with our different partners to make sure that that continues. And just a few weeks ago, we opened Project Home Key, which was a collaboration with the state of California for over 100 homeless and unstably housed individuals to live in modular supportive housing with the city. So I think that there's, you know, some things we've been working on, but we've heard, you know, the need is very great. So it's kind of continuing to build off those existing programs. I think when it comes to the reopening date, I think, you know, part of it's collaboration, part of it has been the city pivoting to when we hear the federal government release, new guidelines, as well as the state to release new guidelines. And so when we first heard the June 15th reopening deadline, that was my first question: was what does that mean for the eviction moratorium? What does that mean for our community? And so the city, we've been working on that since we heard the governor announce that. So, I think that there's more to come in terms of what that means, but making sure that people are, we don't want people to be displaced. And we're working on that. So one of the other things that the federal government announced, right, is the American Rescue Plan. So for the city of Mountain View, we're expecting about an estimated $14 million over this year and next year. And we are looking to reinvest that in the community. We also are looking to pilot a universal basic income program, which would be reinvesting into residents with a stipend. We're actually meeting later tomorrow about what the implementation process would be. And then we've been actually working with our Latinx community on the Mountain View Solidarity Fund, which I know the Los Altos Community Foundation is involved with the Solidarity Fund. So it is a kind of all hands on deck, multi-pronged approach from before the pandemic, and then as we're talking about, coming out of it. And I think one of the things I'm proud of Mountain View is we have a pretty can-do spirit. And I ask all of you, let's work together. Let's find a way to address this issue, because, as was mentioned, it's not just going to be one of us, it's going to have to be all of us to really make an impact.
Thank you so much. Catherine, you mentioned something that I want to bring it into the conversation, sort of tied in a little bit as well. You mentioned that our donor base, and this is, I believe, a question that was actually also raised somewhat by Karen Law. So I'm going to sort of take this and sort of mash these two questions together. Karen's question was she was interested in the philanthropic dollars going to national, international groups versus local opportunities. Catherine, you talked about donors with resources basically leaving the community because they could. They could go relocate, or they could go to Aptos, is one example that I heard, and stuff along those lines. And the urgency of seeing the need locally seems to have diminished. And so you get the national flavor, you get the international flavor, but the opportunity or the understanding that there is really local needs at the same time seem to have fallen a little bit behind. And so Karen's question, my question, I'll sort of, again, mash these together. What's the best way to bring donors back to our community on the local level, so that they understand where all these opportunities are, whether it is housing or technology or food assistance or mental health services? I mean, the range of issues is enormous. You can certainly find whatever priority that you would want, but how do we bring them back?
So that's a great question, Nadine. And in order to answer it, I'll take kind of a couple of steps back and say, when we were founded, when we created Magnify Community back in 2018, the idea there was that we knew that the data showed that although this is a very generous region, many people give to charity, that more than 90% of philanthropy did not go to community serving nonprofits in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. So that's why we exist. That was pre-pandemic. What we have discovered, and this I have to say is actually a nuance and a bit of a good news story that we need to also do a better job about telling, is that when donors learn about what's happening locally, donors give locally. When donors see the impact, see the leaders, see the problems, donors have been giving. So yes, people have been leaving. Then it's incumbent upon us to say, hey, you're not proximate to this anymore, but come and listen to these incredible leaders. Listen to Maria talk about the work that she's doing. Listen to Jen Loving talk about Destination Home. Listen to Chalk talking about what they're doing in order to alleviate all the mental health challenges that folks locally in Mountain View, Los Altos are experiencing. And then donors give. So, for example, at Magnify, we put out a local giving pledge that we launched about 2 years ago. And we have 40 individuals, high net worth individuals and family foundations who have taken it. And among those pledgers, just in 2020, they increased their giving to local organizations by $35 million. They're giving $116 million locally. They have done some extraordinary things. So we just need more people doing it. We need, and many of those people, by the way, were distant and were saying, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I had no idea. So, you know, sometimes people don't open their eyes and could have an idea. And sometimes people, for whatever reason, you know, we're all in this. And so we have to advance those narratives. We have to bring those leaders forward. We have to make sure that the resilient, incredible nonprofits that we have are telling their story. And I do think that some of this is possible. We just need more people in the pool, and we need more people when they're giving to give more, to say these problems, like my, I'll put numbers on various things. My $10,000 check is fabulous, but you know what? This isn't a $10,000 problem. You know, this is a $100,000 problem, and I can write a $100,000 check. Or this is I'm writing, whatever it may be, whatever it fits, whatever that donor can do and give. It all helps. It all matters. But we need to think along the scale of the problem that we have and the scale of the solutions that we have in our power to offer.
Sorry, I muted myself. Thank you, Catherine. That's I had this weird kind of thought, but I was like, as the mayor was speaking at the UBI, I was wondering, like, well, can we add more money to your UBI pool? And I don't know if that's even possible, but again, if you're talking about literally transferring resources to those people we need, maybe there's a methodology there for something.
Yeah, can I ask a little bit? I'm really grateful with the philanthropy, and I really encourage to continue. But my view here is could be great if we think a little more in investment in the community. So trying to just change the status quo. Charity is good, solidarity is better, but change the systemic situation that the community is right now. So we're supposed to learn with COVID, so how to be ready, how the inequalities are in the community. And unfortunately, if still something else happened, another tragedy, another pandemic, the most vulnerable people is going to be the same. So, and it's already more than a year. So, and I'm really concerned. Definitely, I'm getting older and older, and I really want to see something different. And I hope collaboration and just to see things or the things differently, things are going to change. Because if we are going to continue just giving money, I totally take it, right? But we need to invest. We need to do better with our money, with our resources. So I hope my point is will take. I hope I have an echo on that because it's what we need. And
can I just say, Maria, I love that the way that you're talking about investment, because I think that is accurate, and it's also really resonant and effective. I mean, we talk about, making Silicon Valley a better place for all of us. Everything that we do to invest, a place is its people, and we're all. It's so cliche to say that we're interconnected, but we absolutely are, and this is an investment in this place and in our future and in where we're raising our kids and building our companies.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's it. When you're talking about creating systems level change, you have to think beyond just the transactional. You actually really intensely have to think about what else can you do beyond that. And that, I think, part of what I was hearing was that there were so many great connections prior to the pandemic between the civic sector and the nonprofit sector and philanthropies, and those relationships either deepened or became even stronger. And those should continue and could potentially be really focused on this kind of investment questions, systems level change kind of question, instead of simply doing that transactional kind of focus. I'm cognizant of time. I will keep us on time. There are a few questions in the chat. Are we open to having people ask their questions directly instead of me reading them? Can I put my team on the fly? Hank, is
That's fine.
Allison Aldrich is available? Would she like to ask her question about tutoring for children? And if not, I'll ask it on her behalf.
Hi there. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to listen to this important topic. The question is, sorry, I was just running, so I'm out of breath here, listening to you on my run. Do the children who were online for school or not online because they didn't have the ability to do so, do they need some extra educational tutoring this summer? That now perhaps the schools are on top of it, and so this is a moot question, but I know a lot of people would be happy to help out in that way.
Thank you.
So
Go ahead.
Okay.
what I was going to say is yes. And
Short answer, yes.
there's even a term of art for it. High dosage tutoring. And so there's a tremendous effort afoot now regionally to be thinking about what can we do. There's going to be a lot of federal government money that's going to be coming in that could help fund that, but how to make sure that that money gets to kids and gets to kids in an efficient way. That's a real question. And by the way, that level of coordination and implementation has its own costs. Innovate Public Schools is right now in the midst of trying, which is a nonprofit organizing and advocacy group, is in the process right now of trying to think about something comprehensive for this area that could do that really effectively. But I'll stop there and say if there's other specific things that are local where you know about the opportunities, I'd love to hear about them too.
One of them that I was thinking of, I can't remember the new name of the organization. It used to be called Partners for New Generation. And Bob and Lois Adams are very involved in it.
Mentor tutor connection now.
Yes. So maybe they already have a network. So maybe maybe we could help through them.
I'll just add my 2 cents, which is I know we have I think a couple trustees on the call as well, and so I know that they're going to be doing summer programming for students, and I think that we can. I'm happy to talk with them about what formal opportunities they have. I know that our Parks and Recreation program has youth leaders who will be working with students this summer. And then I'll also say, I know that Lots of Love has a reading program where youth go to the safe parking lots to read and help provide tutoring. So I think there's a lot of different ways to kind of be involved. And then the one thing I didn't get to answer the last question, but I think it's important to highlight public-private partnerships. I think, just as a quick example, Project Home Key was, state funding, city funding, as well as some of our large businesses in the area and individual donors. And that's how we were able to tackle that problem. So I think when we are talking about leveraging funding, we can talk about the success of public-private partnerships and how we can create more of those.
Thank you. I really appreciate the answer and the willingness to jump in. Allison, sorry to do this while you're running. I had no idea. So apologies. I'm going to throw out the last question, and this is really, it's perhaps a softball question, but it's designed and actually to generate a little bit of thinking, which is, what advice would you give to those in the audience about ways that they can become involved in helping to support underserved members of our community, the nonprofits in our community, as we try to tackle this K-shaped recovery?
Can I go?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just seeing a wonderful face of one of my favorite volunteers, Gwen Smith. And the best way that I can advise is just be with the people. So be connected. So Gwen has been with us as ESL teacher volunteer coordinator for many, many years. Well, now, even though we are not able to provide these classes in person, so she's still doing it by Zoom. And also, she has been coming, supporting our now launch program every single Saturday, helping me. So, helping the community. So that is one advice, I really encourage and actually request for all of you, because I know if you are attending this webinar is because you really care about this and about the community. And also because I know time is getting short. So I wanted to invite you just to think out of the box, just be able to imagine a better world. Just this is not normal. So if we get back to the normal, it's not right. So I believe at this point we have it. We have it clear in our mind. So we have been working on different approaches. And for example, Manzanita works. So we are exploring different possibilities for housing, for education, for transportation. So just be willing to try. So this is our life chance or chance life, whatever it says. But thank you.
Fantastic. Madam Mayor, Catherine, any other suggestions, thoughts?
I love what Maria just said. I think that there are so many opportunities to crib a phrase, to get proximate, to hear what's happening in community. So many nonprofit organizations are now doing different kinds of virtual site visits and virtual opportunities, taking a look at the organizations that the Los Altos Community Foundation has given to, looking at those, reading the newsletter. We bring voices to from the community to folks who are donors who want to make a difference, through our newsletter and our blogs on a regular basis. I think giving and engaging and just listening, asking people who are nonprofit leaders, what do you need? What do you need? What do the people who you work with need? What do I not know that I need to know? And just be open to that, and be open to, relationship, and liberate yourself from that notion of kind of transaction, and say you can be part of something else. Last thing I would say, this isn't directly answering your question, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, is to think about where are the gaps too, that in things that are important to this community that are not immediately being filled, where it's meaningful to this place. Arts and environment are two of those things that I would also call out, not basic human needs things, but really fundamental to the way our community functions. And think about, what do the organizations that do that work, what do they need right now? And to think about that, and being part of it is so satisfying.
Fantastic, thank you. Madam Mayor, closing comments? 30 seconds or less.
Okay, I'm on the time here. So I would just, my advice would be, I think we all can make a difference. I would say today we talked a lot about financial resources, but there's also the resource of time, your energy. There's so many volunteering opportunities to get involved and to meet. There's something that will meet you where you are. So if it's just volunteering at Hope's Corner to provide food, or whether it's provide ESL at the Day Worker Center, I think there's something we can all do to contribute to recover from the pandemic, but also to make a difference in our community. And all of us would be very happy, I think, to share resources. And so look forward to the partnership.
Fantastic. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. It's 1 o'clock exactly. I will be, I'll bring us to a close. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I will remind everybody that we do have this little survey right afterwards, and we are encouraging you to participate in the survey, because we will draw 2 people's names, and then you actually will have the opportunity to make a grant to a local nonprofit. So the link is in the chat. We will be taking notes and then circulating a post after this with some summary thoughts as well, and try to capture the wonderful links that people were putting into the chat into this. And I will close with
Oh,
a
dear.
very, very quick sort of somber recognition that today is the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's death, which I think for us was a just pivotal moment in here. So I do want everyone to be able to reflect on that as well. Thank you for all your time, for your energy, for your work in the community. I hope to see you in person or on a Zoom call soon. We'll keep the chat open, but for now, we are bringing this to a close. This will be open for another 10 minutes if people want to linger. Thanks so much.
I just put the link to the survey in, and I goofed it up the first time, so I think you can see my notes, but please use the second link.
Thanks, Laura.
And we'll also be sending the link out in an email afterward.
There was also a request for a recording, and I assume we're going to send that out to all the participants.
Yeah, we'll make that available too.
Yeah, that should be ready probably in a couple of days at the most. And that'll be included.
This is
You
great.
all are inspiring me. I'm going to also ask, Mayor Ellen a question, which is, how do we find out more about the UBI pilot? That's exciting.
More coming soon. I think at tonight's city council meeting, we'll be discussing a little bit of the parameters and participating. There's the mayors for a guaranteed income that's happening nationwide. And so that was an effort led by former Mayor Michael Tubbs. So there's more to come as we approach our last couple meetings into June before the summer recess. So happy to keep you up to date.
Yeah, please do.
Pretty wild thought, but it's great. I think it's really exciting. Just check it out, see how it plays out.
Like we talked about, we have to try everything,
I
right?
think that's exactly right.
And so this is one of the creative ways. And I think, I'm not sure all of you know, so Governor Newsom talked about how there could be a state match so that the state would be putting $35 million into a UBI program. And so participating cities could try to do a match as we roll out. So we're really excited and hopeful that we can participate in that to, like we talked about, double the impact to the community. So
Excellent. That's really excellent. And do you have any thoughts for us about this whole requirement that came down from the county? Suggestions about what we do with that one, and
which one?
the vaccination tracking one that's been spinning our heads.
Oh yes. Well, more to come. I missed my meeting with my city manager to participate in the panel. So, so I don't have that information for you, but I'm meeting with her in a little bit actually. So I think part of it is we don't always get the opportunity to give feedback before things come from the state or the county, but we will provide that. So if you have any, please let me know.
Yeah, I'll do that. So for those of you who don't know, the mayor's actually organized a roundtable of organizations in Mountain View, as well as school district and so on. And it comes together once a month to have these kind of sort of in-depth conversations about some of the challenges and issues that we're facing. This would be, I guess, a really good conversation for June.
Yes, it's going to be a busy June meeting.
Fantastic. Any other thoughts, questions, Laura?
I did have a question, I guess mostly for Catherine. If we have a couple extra minutes, I'd love to ask. So you talked about, the increase in wealth that's happened during the pandemic for the fortunate in our community. And so I guess my question is, a lot of that is new money, and particularly for people who may not have grown up with resources. Even when they get there, they never quite feel that they've arrived, and they might not have that philanthropic background. And how do we start to kind of have that conversation with people with new means and get them into the mindset of investing in your community, that donating and being, is investing in the betterment of the whole community, and it's good for everybody. Because I'm not sure that again, the newly wealthy have that so much.
Well, I mean, part of me, this is kind of a wise ass answer, is like, if you can figure that out, please tell me. But I would also say, because that's one thing actually that we're working on quite a bit, and it's challenging. And so what we have learned is peer influence is huge. And it's, it's repetition, it's early and often, it's make it easy, and tell them 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 again. Because people are building companies. There's this whole like, I have wealth, but I don't feel like I've arrived. I'm thinking in an income mentality. I'm thinking in like, what's going my next liquidity event mentality. My kids are young. Am I going to not? But it's this scarcity mentality as opposed to an abundance mentality. It's getting them where they are. It's finding a few outlier ambassadors who are in their peer group to do it, getting them proximate to leaders. A lot of the new wealth here is very much in the tech venture mindset, like you're betting on leaders, jockeys. Who's the jockey? And it's saying who are, like, the Marias of our community, who are the leaders that where you as a leader can understand that this is a leader who's going to bring our community forward. These are all kind of different things, but I will tell you in all candor that unlocking some of the younger, newer money is excruciatingly difficult. We work in partnership with many organizations, and we're all wrestling with this. There's something called First Principles Forum, which is now housed at Stanford PAC, Stanford Center for Philanthropy and Civil Society, and they work with people who have had a wealth event and may be primed to, to do philanthropy. It's not just local. I mean, it happens to be headquartered locally, but it's national. And this is exactly something that they're working on. So I would just say that. And with that, I apologize. I am also going to need to go, but more than happy to continue this conversation with anyone and everyone. You can find it at magnifycommunity.com and reach out to me, Catherine at magnifycommunity.com. I'm more than happy to talk to you. Thanks so much. I'm really glad to have
being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Let's bring this to a close. We're at 10 or so after the hour. Thank you all for being here and being part of this conversation. I will close out the conversation, and I think that will boot everybody out. So thanks so much, Maria. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Great to have you.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Take care.
All right, thanks
Bye-bye.
everybody. Staff, if you want to huddle back up, I'll do a Zoom with you all.
Okay. Should we go on the Clatch link?
Sure. See you there.
Okay.
Bye.